Hello and welcome to The Pickle, brought to you by AC4SA, academic coaching for student athletes, and co-hosted by Ethan O'Day and Jack Sundberg. Here on The Pickle, we discuss with our guests, ranging from coaches to professional athletes, the pickle of all things. Academics, sports, recruiting, high school to the pros, you name it, we talk about it. Our goal for the podcast is to give people insight into the sports world and student athletes' perspectives by sharing current and former athletes, educators, and coaches' real-life experiences. Telling story is one of the most powerful means for leaders to influence, teach, and inspire. These stories resonate in our culture, history, and lesson learned. The Pickle brings you these stories of adversity, triumph, failure, and determination to get inspired, to take them to your school, home, life, and court. Listen, learn, share, and enjoy. Today's guest is Matt Porter. Matt is from Chicago, Illinois, where he went to high school as a star football player before going to Choate Rosemary Hall as a postgraduate student. Matt continued his football career at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, where he was a psychology major. Matt was NESCAC Conference Rookie of the Year and continued his success by being all NESCAC and an All-American lineman. He won the NESCAC championship his freshman year. Matt now coaches and teaches at prep school Williston, Northampton. Welcome to The Pickle.
Good.
All right, The Pickle Pod. We're back and we're better. Really excited for our guest today, former Trinity football player and current coach and teacher, Matt Porter. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
How we doing, guys?
I'm excited to have you on. I think you're going to have a lot of good insight. You know, you're a football player. You went to prep school. You know, coming over from Chicago, I think you're going to have a lot of good insight to pass down to these student athletes, parents, everybody. So with all of our guests, obviously, if you've been following, we do the rundown. It's just 5 quick questions, just so everybody gets to know you a little bit better, sort of an icebreaker. And go ahead, Ethan, take them away.
All right, let's get right into it. Here's the rundown. Dinner with one athlete.
I'm going to go Michael Jordan.
Chicago.
Yeah.
There we go. Yep, Chicago. Number one thing on the bucket list.
I go back and forth. For some reason, I kind of want to go skydiving, but then the other 50% of me is like, are you crazy? But I would say that's definitely something that would be on the bucket list.
Ethan hates skydiving, and about 75% of our guests, they all say skydiving.
Yeah, that's
like
a classic response. I'm not doing it. Favorite movie of all time?
Space Jam.
Mm-hmm.
Great one.
Classic. I'm interested to see how the second one comes out with LeBron. Let's go. Number 4. How do you start your day? What's the first thing you do?
First thing I do every morning, I say a little prayer, just something quick and simple, you know, being thankful. And then I get my day started. So nice, quick prayer.
Yeah.
Little gratitude. I love that.
Yep. And final question here. Favorite quote?
My favorite quote is actually a quote that I say to a lot of my friends, and I also say to my students. It's actually something my dad used to say to me. I don't know where he got it from, but the quote is, the same thing that makes you laugh can make you cry.
I like that.
It's something that's really stuck with me. You know, and I tell my players that, you know, when they, you know, we're watching film and they see, you know, a great catch or they make a kid fall, you know, and everybody lose their mind. I say, well, same thing that makes you laugh can make you cry. You can be that same kid that's ripping apart on a Monday. So don't get too happy.
That's right. Perspective. I love it.
The rundown. You finished it.
That's it.
Love it.
All right, cool. Yeah, so we'll sort of just dive right in. You know, obviously our guests are going to know who you are and have a background in your resume and stuff. But so you played football and, you know, you're a stud coming in your freshman year, starting, you know, and so right away you're on the squad, you're full time. You're not like, you know, another freshman who's, you know, sort of guiding their way into it. Maybe they don't play, maybe they redshirt. But then you're also at a school like Trinity, which is, pretty academic oriented. It's pretty rigorous, actually. How did you sort of balance both? Where did you find success, and where did you sort of try to steer away from it as you went through your college career?
So I mean, what's actually funny is all 4 years, my best try, except for my junior year because I studied abroad, but all my other 3 years, my best grades were in the fall. And I
Really?
think it was because it was so structured. I knew every day we were going to have film at the same time, we were going to have practice at the same time, and that kind of kept me in order. So like I knew like, hey, if I have some extra work I need to do, if I need to meet with a professor, if I got to meet with a group or something, or if I need, go meet with a classmate, like I had to do it before this time because I knew, I had to be at practice at this time. I needed to be in the locker room for film, at 3:45. Couldn't be there at 3:46, couldn't be a couple minutes late. And then also as a freshman, you kind of feel that pressure. You don't want to be that freshman that's like, hey, coach, I know this is the second practice. I'm going to be late because I got to go find my teacher. So I think for me, the biggest thing was having that structure. That definitely helped me out a lot in terms of being able to manage my time. I think also for me, going to prep school kind of helped me with that. Doing the PG year definitely helped me mature a lot faster. I had to manage all of my time. I had to figure out when I could have social time, when I could have time to do work, when I had time to take a nap, when I had time to play video games, all that stuff. You have to think about a little bit more because of the schedule of being a college athlete. So I think for me that structured time or just knowing that, hey, I have these things every single day and that's not going to change, I think that kept me, in the right mind frame.
Love that. Structure creates freedom. I think I heard Matthew McConaughey say that recently. It resonated with me. If you take care of what you need to take care of, then you can have the freedom to do the things you want to do, especially I think after you get out of sports too. So it's such valuable lesson there. Talk a little bit about that experience of studying abroad while playing a college sport, because I think not a lot of guys get that experience. I'd like to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty interesting. It's definitely a D3 thing, but so usually most football players, our junior spring, if you are going to go abroad, that's pretty much the only time you can do it, just because it aligns with your schedule. 9 times out of 10, you don't need that many more classes for whatever your major is. So a bunch of my friends went to Cape Town. I had some friends that went to Barcelona. I ended up going to Trinidad and Tobago for 5 months. It was one of the greatest experiences of my life. It was pretty interesting because I was voted captain for the next year, but I wasn't on campus. But our coaches were pretty flexible about that. Their biggest thing was just when I was able to just connecting with the guys on campus. So there would be times where I'd stay up late and I'd Skype some of my teammates just to check in, see how people are doing, because not everyone can go abroad, but a lot of guys chose to. So it was very interesting. School in another country was definitely a crazy experience. Like I'll never forget. So I had 2 classes that were like our Trinity classes, but then I also took a class for my major at the University of West Indies. And I remember like getting the grading scale and seeing like, it was like, 80 to 100 is an A and like 50 to 79 is a B. And I was like, wow, this is going to be easy. But then like I got my syllabus and it was like, yeah, you only have 2 tests. There's no homework. There's no class, no projects. It's 2 tests. And so, you
either got to show up.
Yes, right. It's pretty interesting. I was definitely able to work out because it was pretty much above 80 the entire time I was there. Pretty cool.
That's not like Connecticut.
Able to, stay in shape a little bit, but I was able to enjoy, another country, which I think was a very cool experience that, like Ethan said, a lot of guys don't get that opportunity. So I was very grateful for it. But it was, a little weird thinking like, hey, when you get back, it's going to be summertime. You got to hit overdrive because you definitely aren't working out like you would be if you were, in the off-season program. So it was great. And I, enjoyed every second of it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And it's so funny. I think a lot of student athletes, they're obsessed with either, I got to go D1, I got to go D1. And, there's so many different experiences that you can have that are going to, be eye-opening to you, like you said. that maybe you won't be able to experience at a place, you know, if you go to a Rutgers or if you go to, you know, wherever it may be, which is life experience that's, you know, like you said, like you wouldn't trade that back for anything. But at the same time, you know, I think there's this like stigma around D3 that, you know, you're not putting in like the crazy hours. But I know plenty of D3 guys. You guys are putting in the work just as if you're a D1 student athlete. You know, it's not like it's a cakewalk. You're still working and getting your time, getting your lifts in, getting film. But maybe you're just, you know, not playing in front of 100,000 people or 50,000 people or whatever it may be. So dive into a little bit about that, about, you know, playing D3, but it's not like you guys are still working just as hard as any other student athlete.
Yeah, I would, you know, that's definitely something I talk with my players about. You know, at the end of the day, playing another sport at the next level is playing another sport at the next level. You know,
Right.
D1, D3. You know, I have plenty of friends that played Division I, Division II. I've had some friends. You know, my younger brother plays at NAIA school. You know, and you know they have spring ball, and that's an NAIA school in Florida. But you know, at the end of the day, playing a college sport is work. You know, you don't have a lot of free time. You know, no matter if you play at Alabama or if you play at some small D3 school in, you know, Maine or something like that, you know, you're going to be working. You're going to be watching a ton of film. You're going to be practicing, you know, in the off season, you're going to be getting up at 5 a.m. You know, it's still work, you know, it's still dedication. And, you know, one thing I used to say was that sometimes I used to think of it as a little bit more dedication. You know, when you're a Division I athlete, like you're with your team majority of the year, you know, so your strength and conditioning coach is there. Your coach, you know, your position coach is there watching you. When you're a Division III athlete, you're home for majority of the summer. So a lot of it is on you. You know, you have to make the decision, you know, do I want to, you know, BS and then show up and then think, you know, I'm pretty talented, so maybe I'll be able to, you know, get back into it really quickly. Or, you know, you can make that decision and say, I'm going to put all this effort in over the summer so that, you know, show up, I'm prepared to play. And so for me, that was something that was kind of eye-opening. You know, I, just like everybody else, I was like, I want to go D1, I want to go D1. And then when things didn't happen, you know, one thing that, you know, I learned very quickly after my first year, you know, was that doesn't mean I get to slack off. You know, you know, my first meeting after my freshman year with my O-line coach, he was like, you know, you are talented, but you got to hit the weight room. Like you got to fall in love with the weight room and fall in love with watching film, you know, and that's something that when you're a Division I athlete like that, like we talked about earlier, that time is structured for you to go watch that film. You know, I have to watch film at 3 p.m. and then I have to watch film at 8 p.m. You know, when I was we knew we were watching film, you know, before practice, but, you know, there were plenty of times where there'd be 10, 12 guys in the locker room after practice watching practice film or watching game film for the team we're playing that next week. So it's, you know, it's still work. And I think you have to realize that, yes, it may be different levels, but, you know, you still have to put in that time if you want to excel.
Yeah. We talk about this all the time, is the fit when kids are making their decision to go to the next level. And a lot of guys get obsessed with that idea of going Division I. And there's circumstances, and I've seen it happen too with former teammates that I've been with, where they, you know, they go to the school because they really have D1 on their mind, but it's not the right fit, or they're going into a situation where there's not an opportunity for them to thrive. And, you know, reality is you're going to have to maybe wait your turn if you go D1. D3 situations or D2, it might be a better situation for some kids academically, socially, and just for a better college experience where you can have some more time to figure out a lot more stuff about yourself, do different things, and also be able to play and play the sport you want to play. Exactly. So I think that's you're a great example of that. You've really hit it on the head there with all those points, having the right fit and not being so locked in on the idea that you have to go D1.
Yeah.
I'm sure you talk to a lot of your players and students about that too.
Especially with how social media is now, you know, when
it's out of control.
Like you know, at the end of the day, if you know, have aspirations to go play professionally, you know, with how YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, you know, if it's meant for you to be there, someone will find you because your film is easily accessible anywhere. So, you know, that's another point I push the kids, like, you know, you will be found no matter where you come from.
Right. Right. No, I mean, I think like you said, the social media, it's such, even when I was coming up, it was like, we're not that far removed, guys. So we're not that far out, but it was such an obsession with like, oh, if I go D2, D3, you know, people aren't going to think I'm that good, you know, and the fact is, it's like, it doesn't matter when you come, no one really cares, you know, it's like, oh yeah, he went D1, but it's like, they forget about it after a week. And it's like, find a spot that's good for you, because it comes down to you. If you have a crappy Division 1 experience and all you're obsessed with sports and that's it, and then you leave and you don't have a meaningful degree or a right, you know, career path, you know, maybe if you went D3, it would have been a little different. So yeah, I mean, you just crushed that answer. I think it's going to be really eye-opening for people to hear that, as far as, you know, the experience and what you're doing. So obviously, as we all know, the recruiting process is stressful. It is a nightmare. You're trying to get in touch with coaches. They're not responding to emails. You know, you're waiting, like on the first day, coaches can call you, your phone's dry. You're like, I'm not going to play anywhere. So you had a unique experience of coming from Chicago and then going to a prep school and then going to Trinity. And for a lot of our guests who don't know, Matt was coming into his post-grad year pretty much on his way to go play football at Yale. And, you know, some coaches left and the head coach left. And so all of a sudden Matt was sort of left with a decision to make of where to go to school. And so this is just a great example of the recruiting process and how like that, it can just change up on you. So talk a little bit about your story, your journey, your recruiting process, and just really the realities of it.
Yeah. So so the offensive line coach, he actually showed up to my high school one day randomly. And he started talking to me, and then, you know, it didn't click at first. And then like after we, you know, ended the conversation, he told me, you know, he wanted me to come to the camp. He was going to be in touch. But then it clicked. I was like, wow, that's actually Yale. Like that's the Ivy League school.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I went to the camp, did a pretty good job there. You know, and so basically I verbally committed to Yale going into my senior year, but they wanted me to do a PG year, you know, for academics and athletics. You know, they basically said, you know, we want you to be prepared for the academic side of things, but also, you know, athletically, it'd be a great opportunity for you to go somewhere, get a little bit stronger, faster, you know, so that way when you come in, you have a better chance of competing for a spot. And so went to Choate. I think it was like 2 weeks before the end of our season. Offensive line coach came to practice, and he told me the situation. There was going to be a coaching change. You know, he wasn't sure about where he would end up or if he would stay. He ended up leaving himself. And so at that point, you know, there were a couple other Patriot League schools that I was looking at, but a lot of them thought I was going to Yale, so they didn't have spots. And then immediately, my head coach and one of my assistant coaches, they told me about some NESCAC schools. So I went to visit Williams, Amherst, and Trinity. Trinity, you know, was my best visit. I clicked with a lot of the guys. I really loved the coaching staff. And so I ended up going there. A lot of people now ask me, you know, if I could go back, would I change that? And I stick by my answer. I definitely say no. You know, I had a pretty good experience there. You know, it was funny because probably 2 weeks before I was supposed to show up, the offensive line coach calls me and it's like, hey, like, I know you've played center. We recruited you as a center, but our tackle just got in some trouble and can't play this year. So we're going to move you to tackle. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I'll figure it out. But as far as the recruiting process, you know, for me, it was a crazy experience. You know, I went from, you know, freshman, sophomore year, thinking I was going to go D1. You know, I got all the same interest mail that you get from the schools, where they send you a letter, and, you know,
Yep.
First time you get a letter from, you know, Wisconsin or something, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to Wisconsin. I'm going to the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And so, you know, by junior year, I started to kind of talk to some Ivies and Patriot League schools, you know, but when things fell through, I think the big thing for me was just, you know, recognizing, you know, at the end of the day, you know, there must be a reason for this, you know, and I can't change, or control what's going to happen, in terms of colleges. Like, trust me, if I could get a school to offer me, I would have done it and I would have had an offer. But for me, it's a realization that, this was the place for me. And, when I ended up starting my freshman year, we won an SCAC championship. And after that, I thought about, leaving. But to me, I was in a great situation. I was getting a really good education. I was somewhere where football was a huge priority to the school, but it was also a priority to me. And I had the opportunity to play. And that for me was the biggest thing. I think, everybody that wants to go D1, they're thinking that, oh, I'm going to go D1 and I'm going to play. And, like we talked about a little bit earlier, it's about where you fit. If you are somebody who values playing more than the name, you might not want to go try to force yourself on, to a Division I school, try to force yourself to be a preferred walk-on or something like that. Because when you get there and you are at the end of the bench, or you're, essentially you're just there for practice, it's going to be tough, and that's an adjustment. Right. And so for me, that was something that, I kind of accepted. And, the other thing was that I saw that it was still high level football, just because it was a division in Connecticut, there were some guys that I played with and some guys that I played against who, in my eyes, could definitely be Division I players somewhere, and for me, that was something that was pretty cool, being able to go somewhere and play some high level football, but also still have, a social life, also still have the ability to see my family and friends and also enjoy, things outside of football. Because I have great friends who weren't on the football team because I had a little bit of extra time. And so, that process is strenuous, but, I think it's just about you, settling down and just really looking at what's in front of you.
Crazy situation to happen to have the coaching staff leave like that with after you're recruited and not be able to go in. It's a tough situation, but it sounds like things worked out for you in the right way, and you really found a school that you thrived at and had a great career and had some opportunities to even leave, and you loved it so much you wanted to stay. So that's amazing that it worked out for the best, because that's not always the case. Talk a little bit about the recruiting process with grades, getting your grades right to get on track to go to Yale and a Trinity as well. Like, these are really high academic schools. I went through the recruiting process as well too, and like would talk to like some higher academic and Ivy League schools, and they like got to retake the SATs.
Yep.
That was always the big thing with me. What was it like going to Choate, and then how were your grades before that too?
So that was definitely the same with me. One thing that Yale wanted me to do was retake the ACT. So being in the Midwest, the ACT was big for me. I never took the SAT. I had taken the practice ACT, and then I had just heard that the ACT might have been a little bit harder, so I just stuck with the ACT. But academically, all the credit I think I would give to my mom. That was something that she pushed to me no matter what. Like, she is a diehard football fan. Like, my mother still calls me every Sunday talking about highlights, talking about players. I think she's a coach. But at the end of the day, she always told me, school comes first. I don't, you can be as good as you want in football, basketball, whatever sports you decide to play, but your academics are what's really going to carry you for the long run. And so I had good grades coming out of high school. I think Choate really helped me in terms of study habits and figuring out what works for me. Public school, it was good for what it was, but I didn't learn, I would say, a lot of strategies that would help make you successful, at the next level. But for me, prep school was huge because I learned how to do research and write a research paper and do it in a timely fashion. I learned how to set aside and learn how to study for different subjects. How I studied for, my science test was a little bit different from how I studied for my math test. So for me, that was the big thing. I think in terms of the process, I I push to all kids now that, academics are just as important as you making this amazing highlight tape, because, no college coach, especially a Division I coach, wants to be dealing with a star player who can't pass their, English 101 class, when they got to be. And so, a lot of kids, I think just believe that, all right, if I, shine in every game I play in, every combine and all this stuff, I have great highlight tapes. So when I play another high level player, that's going to carry me. But, colleges are much stricter now in terms of what classes you can take and what makes you eligible or ineligible for a game. And so I think, more and more people and more kids too are starting to see that, you have to take it just as serious, and that doesn't mean, you need to take, 7 AP classes. But what that does mean is that you have to put in the effort, the same effort, that you put in, to get stronger in the weight room or get quicker when you're doing, drills on the court, on the field or something like that. You got to put that effort in the classroom, because your grades are going to be something that is probably the first or second question that a college coach asks. How you doing? But they're going to say, hey, how are those grades looking? Because, if you're ineligible, you're no good to them.
Yeah, can't play. And I think that was actually sort of our next sort of topic we want to talk to you about is, now you're a teacher and a coach. Obviously you said you stress the importance of your grades to your student athletes and how important it is, and how just as quickly as they'll look at that highlight reel, they'll look away just as quickly by looking at your transcript, because as we've talked with numerous of our guests, there's so many guys out there, and there's, like we talked about earlier, the social media and stuff. It's just, there's so many kids. It's like and if you really think you're that special, I'm telling you, there is a lot of other special people out there. Right. And that same special person, they might have a 3.5 or a 3.0 compared to your 2.5, 2.8. We had one guest talk specifically about, he's like, if you run a 4.4, right, and you have a 3.5 and the other guy runs a 4.35 and he's got a 2.8, you're probably going to be selected over that kid, because like you said, it's going to be a hassle. And you're no good if you're not playing. If you're ineligible, you can't help the team. Right. So talk a little bit of, what you stress to your student athletes now as far as the classroom and really just socially finding a fit school-wise, as far as things you steer them towards, but at the same time, things you're like, hey, actually, I wouldn't really do that.
Right. Yeah. So I think one thing that's really big to me is taking pride in everything that you do. I talk to a lot of our students, just in general, but especially our student athletes about, taking pride in everything that every single thing that you put yourself into, take pride in. The same pride that you take into being a great baseball player, you should take that same pride into, being a great history student, because one thing that I always say is that everything's connected, and so if you build bad habits somewhere, that bad habit is going to carry on somewhere else. And so for me, that's just something that I always tell kids, and they're always like, no, it doesn't mean that. And I'm like, it is. Like, habits are habits, everybody has good habits, everybody has bad habits, and when you have the habit, for example, if you have this habit of thinking, all right, I'll show up on game day, meaning I won't take practice too hard, I'll just be ready for the game. You'll say the same thing in the classroom. You'll say, all right, I don't need to study. I might not need to do this classwork assignment because when I take the test, I'm going to do well. But then what happens when you fail that test?
Yeah.
Times, the work that you're doing up to a test is supposed to prepare you for it. Just like in sports, the work that you do in practice is supposed to prepare you for your game, and so that's a big thing for me, is just talking about that pride and realizing that you need to make good habits. Every sports and life are so related. And like, I'm sure, both of you all say the same thing and have heard the same thing. And so the more you really think about it, the more, it kind of makes sense that, if you decide to take a day off, athletically, and when you shouldn't, that may hurt you in the long run. You may not be in shape. You may not be prepared for a competition. Just like in the classroom, if you, decide, what, I'm just going to sit in class today and not pay attention. How's that going to affect you in your next class? How's that going to affect you, when you take a standardized test or something like that?
Right.
Right. Those are that's something that I definitely try to emphasize, because I think, a lot of people do believe that. Like, I definitely fall victim to that. I've seen it plenty of times when I was a high school kid. I'd be like,
Yeah.
"Man, I don't want to practice today. Like, I'll be
Yeah.
fine on game day. We're not even playing a good team this weekend. So why do I
Yeah.
have to work hard?" But then, you get in that game, you're a little out of shape. You might not have watched film that week, so you might have, missed something that they like to do. And so for me, I talk a lot about habits, because that's something that, I've really started to think about myself. Now that I'm an adult, like I want to try to build good habits for myself. And that's something that I try to stress to the kids, because something I see myself doing. I have bad habits that I have to break. So that's definitely something that's big to me when talking to kids about, setting themselves up for success in whatever realm, they're going into.
Yeah.
And being a younger coach and teacher and a guy that's done this before, do you think with your student athletes you're able to resonate a little bit more with them, as you've been teaching and going through that process? And when did you, and the second part of this question, like, when did you really know you wanted to get into coaching and teaching, like through your college experience and professional life?
Yeah, I definitely think it helps me out a little bit. I think, as we all know, kids are going to be kids just like we were kids. We're going to learn the most from our own experiences. So yes, a coach can tell us all these great things. We'll be like, "You are right, coach, but still going to do this." So
Yeah.
it helps a little bit, in terms of getting them to really buy into the larger, system of saying I have to, put effort in. But of course, the little things aren't going to always be perfect. And I would definitely say probably junior, senior year is when I started to think about it. I knew I wanted to coach. I wasn't super sure about teaching. Even when I got the job, I was like, wow, I'm going to be a teacher. Like, crazy. But I ended up liking teaching, a lot more than I thought it would, because for me, it was kind of a cool way of getting athletes to see things off the field or off the court in a different way. I think when you coach and that's just the only place that athletes see you, sometimes it may be a little bit harder for them to trust you about some other life issues or life things.
Right.
And so for me, I think it is cool being in the class, because, I can kind of relate to a lot of the student athletes and understanding that, I was in your shoes where, there would be times where you sitting in class and you're like, well, I'm going to get a sports scholarship. So like, why do I need to do this? But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I also recognize really early on that, yes, I do want a sports scholarship, but hey, if I do XYZ, academically or, just in my school environment, that's going to up my chances of getting to, a school that I may want to go to.
Definitely.
And is to see it as not separate, but at the end of the day, everything matters. So what you do in the classroom, what you do on the court, on the ice, on the field, what you do, socially on campus, if you are someone who's a jerk, at the end of the day, a part of, a lot of college coaches, what do they want to do? They're going to want to know who you are as a person. And what are they going to do? They're going to go talk to your teachers, your coaches. And so
Right.
you're somebody that, yes, you thrived athletically, but you were jerking, you were jerking to school. You weren't that great of a student. Some college coaches may be like, do I want to deal with this? Because how is it going to work here? And things don't go your way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of our guests talk about character, like you just said. I mean, it's college coaches are recruiting character as well. They want a guy who's going to come in and make not only the team better, but make their teammates better. Because at the end of the day, that's what you got to do to win a championship. And it's funny you said that earlier about, kids, it's tough to listen to a parent or a coach or a teacher sometimes. But I think what's just so cool about the Pickle Pod here is these are all people who have been through it, who have done it. It's not like I'm just sitting here for fun just to tell you guys stuff. This is real life things that numerous student athletes and professional athletes have all gone through. And to learn from my experiences is something that I wish I had, coming in as a freshman saying like, hey, this is something that you want to look into. And sort of got two more questions for you, but you've been crushing it. So sports, right? And we talk about academics and the rigors, and it's going to be tough. And then so some student athletes say, well, why go play a sport? Like what's the point of it? If it's going to be this hard and maybe I'm not even get a full scholarship. What's the point of even playing sports? So tell us why, sports and championships and all this is so important in your life.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing for me, it was fun. I grew up, in a football family. I grew up in a sports family in general. And so for me, it was just always fun, being able to go outside and play pickup basketball, go outside, play soccer, go outside, play football, baseball, all those things. It was fun. It was fun for me. Um, and that was one thing. And then, something I kind of talked about earlier was the life lessons. You know, every sport I have played has taught me something about life. And so, that was something that coaches would tell me, parents would say to me, this is going to be similar to things that you try to do later on in life. And, like we've said, when you're younger, you're like, no, this is sports. Life is something completely different.
Yeah.
As I grew up, I started to see, when you talk about playing a team sport, how it teaches you how to work with people, how it teaches you, you're not going to like everybody that you work with, but you still have to do the things you need to do so everyone can be successful. And then I think also playing a sport like football, for me, that was just, it was a way of letting out some anger in a controlled fashion. It's definitely something that was genuinely just fun. I definitely agree that a lot of times it's actually funny because I saw it was a funny video on Instagram. It was this kid, he like woke up in the morning and it was like the caption was every athlete has thought this before. And he woke up and it was like the clock said 5 a.m. and he was like, what if I just stay home? And it was just like funny because it was like every athlete, goes through that of saying like, man, I have friends who don't play a sport and their life is so great. They sleep in, they get up when they want, they work and make money, they can have fun, but for me, playing a team sport was much, much more fun than doing the just go to school and then that's it. Playing a team sport, making some great friends, competing with other people and figuring out a way to work together. When you have so many different people, so many different types of people that come from different places and getting them to all get on the same page was something that was, pretty incredible to me. And so for me, that's what, kept me around because, I'm sure just like you guys, there were plenty of times we were like, man, I do not want to get up at 5. I can just go back to sleep and be fine.
Every time. That's a great answer. So many good points there. I think Jack and I, that resonates both with us too.
Yeah.
I think what's tough for a lot of kids going through the college process and beyond is it starts to feel more like a job and they forget about that fun. So like trying to find those little pieces of fun, where you can in that 100th practice of the year, as you're doing the same things over and over and over again, you try to make things fun, and you hit it right in the head. Those connections you make with your teammates in a team sports, it's nothing like anything in your life. So that's I couldn't have said it better myself. We'll get right into the final question here. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell your younger self right before you went into the college experience, maybe sophomore, freshman year, Matt?
I would say, the one thing that I would tell myself is what I said I tell my kids now is that everything is connected. Everything that you do, whether it be socially, academically, to your friends, to your parents, when you're working out by yourself versus when you're working out with your teammates, how you treat, random people, all those things matter. All that stuff is connected to the success that you want to have. And so if you treat, every interaction, every workout, every class, with the mindset of, this is what's going to help me be successful in the long run, that's what's going to help you, achieve the goals that you set. Because I think it is hard to, kind of say like, because I hear it all the time, especially now as a teacher, like, oh, when am I going to use this, ever again in my life? Or when am I going to use what I learned in this class? And, I try to tell kids, you are right. Like you may not use what you learned in my psych class, next year in college or 20 years down the line, but there's something that you've learned or heard me say or heard from another classmate or something in this class is going to benefit you down the road. And so just realizing that, it may not always be, what's right there in your face that's going to help you, but all these things are going to, influence, the things that you can do. It's just like when we talk about with college, sometimes the college that you go to may not be where you saw yourself, but maybe the people that you met in terms of networking that could help you later on down the road. And so, I think that's the same thing, and that's something that I definitely wish I would have knew. And I would definitely tell myself going into freshman year, like, hey, every workout, every interaction you have with the person, every class, every game, every practice, like that matters. And so approach the same mindset.
Yeah, no, that's so great. And it's not only, like you said, it's going to benefit you, but it's just, you don't really know when you're going to see it, but it just makes you a better person. And you don't necessarily know, oh, this is going to help me get to the next level. But, there's people watching. There might be a guy who's in that lift and you're going 110%. He's not feeling that day. And he's going to look at Matt Porter and say, damn, well, Matt's out here doing, well, you know what? I'm going to get after it. Right. And there's going to be someone who's watching you hold that door for someone. And, you might not see it, the next day or the next day after that, but maybe you see a year from now, Matt Porter, I like that guy. He's a good guy. And it starts to make you feel good. And you're like, man, you know what? I want other people to be like this too, because this is real stuff that affects our daily lives and goes a long way. And like you were saying earlier, I didn't get to comment on your, sports and the importance of sports. And, I think like a guy like you'll look back forever at that NESCAC championship your first year, and you'll remember it forever, and like you said, that stuff matters. You remember that when you're 80 years old, and you'll be looking back and say, wow, that was a special time. And if you never went and played college sports and you just maybe got your job and worked, you're not going to be looking back if your time at Jamba Juice and saying, wow, I was making some great smoothies. You're going to be looking back and saying, not that there's anything wrong with Jamba Juice. I love Jamba Juice. But, you're going to be looking back and saying, wow, NESCAC, the guys who I played with, I'll never forget that team forever. Right. So I think that's really cool. And Matt, appreciate you coming on, and you've crushed it. And Ethan always likes to say this to our guests as they leave. Go ahead, Ethan.
We'll have you on as a co-host when I gotta be. Is that what you want me? Is that what I always say?
Yeah.
Put me on the spot. Hey, Matt, thank you for coming on, though. Seriously, everything is connected. I'm telling that to my future kids one day. Really inspirational, positive vibes stuff going on here. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for tuning in to The Pickle, who is brought to you by AC4SA, Academic Coaching for Student Athletes, whose goal is to use the power of sport to unleash the athlete's potential in the academic arena.